Hello everyone and welcome to my analysis of the Super Mario 3D World stamp page. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine about this and we were looking over some of the details and we were like, man, this almost has like a story. So, yeah, we're going to look into that today. I'm going to split this up into sections because even though I would love it to, the whole board doesn't really connect as one's big story. It kind of serves as more of like little mini stories. So let me just start out with the top left. Taking a closer look at the top left, we can already see that there is something going on here. We see Mario throwing a fireball at this Koopa. So, yeah, it looks pretty awesome, but you can see that there's a bit of an inconsistency here because if we look a little closer at the Koopa, it actually has a little spark where it looks like that someone stepped on its shell and set the Koopa free, meaning that this probably isn't what we think it looks like. Another thing to note about this section is that this bird seems to have been triggered by something, and it was probably one of two things: the guy that stomped on the Koopa, or Mario who's throwing the fireball. Moving on to the next section, we can see that this light blue fairy is trying to warn Mario about the spike that's about to throw the rod at him. Unlike the first one, this one really doesn't seem to have any inconsistencies. Moving on to the third section, we can actually see a little thing happening right here. This little octopus looking guy is about to shoot Luigi with something. But it's a little confusing because Luigi seems to be falling, and what would have made him fall except for something that came out of the octopus, but we don't actually see depicted that the octopus has shot anything out of his mouth yet. So, yeah, we're not exactly sure. Now, the fourth section is just cruel. This bullet bill is about to obliterate Toad, and this ladybug does nothing about it. I mean, come on, you guys have the same head pattern. Okay, the only thing left on the top line of these stamps is this bee, and it doesn't really seem to have any part of the story except for maybe looking at Mario, who is on the next line. So I'm not exactly sure. As for the sixth section, we have a little bit more action. It seems that this Magic Koopa is trying to cast some kind of spell on this bunny. But upon closer inspection, there's actually looks like that there's something else going on here. It could seem as if the Magic Koopa just turned something else into a bunny, which is also equally possible. As for this big boulder dude, he's probably just surprised that Kamek just did this. Next, we have Rosalina and a checkpoint flag. I honestly don't know what this could mean other than Rosalina is looking at the checkpoint flag because her eye kind of shoots over that way. But at the same time, these two don't really have anything connected to anything. So, this part, on the other hand, definitely does. We see Boomerang Mario attempting to throw a boomerang at Meowser, the main boss of the game. But also, we have Baby Peach just loving it. She is absolutely all over it. Next, we have Mario looking at a Balloon. How do you say those things? Mario looking at a Galoomba. And the look on his face makes it look like he's surprised that the Galoomba just flipped over, even though he is very clearly the one that did that to him. So I'm a little confused. And we also have Peach from the last section looking at this Galoomba, so it kind of almost as if Peach is connected to two different sections, which is kind of cool in my opinion. Next up, we have the OG 8-bit Mario looking at a Spiny. So, my theory on this section is that 8-bit Mario is surprised that Spinies look so much different and scarier now than they did in his game, which honestly makes a lot of sense to me. Now, this next section is nothing short of a mess. We have double cherries over here, a leaf over here, a bomb bomb over here. It's a lot. My theory for this is that Mario is celebrating that there's a lot of power ups because he has a double cherry and a leaf. But, I mean, it just doesn't really make sense. And my theory on the bomb is that maybe he's walking away because the cherry Mario's gonna pick it up and he's gonna get a clone. And then the first thing they're gonna come over to him and just obliterate him because there's two. So I don't know. This section didn't really make a whole lot of sense anyway. Moving right along here, we have the first section of the third line, an ant. The ant seems to be looking at this power star, which is too bad for the ant because Mario, as a cat, is looking at it as well. But that's not all. It looks like this bunny is also trying to get the superstar as well. Now, if we really stop and think about this, it makes a whole lot of sense why the Magic Koopa would have turned someone into a bunny. Because I think the Magic Koopa wants the star for himself. And with that logic, you could even think that maybe the Magic Koopa turned someone into an ant so that he could have further control over who gets the star. But sadly for Mario, he's about to meet the same fate as the ant and the bunny did. If I had to make a theory on which of the characters probably got turned into these creatures, I would say that Blue Toad was probably turned into the bunny and Rosalina was turned into the ant. Why do I say this? Because there is a blue toad dancing around right here, and he's probably dancing around and cheering because he sees the superstar, and he wants to go get it. So he jumps over to it, but the Magic Koopa turns him into a bunny before we can get there. Also, in Rosalina's case, if we go back up here a little bit, we can see Rosalina really carefully eyeing a checkpoint. It's probably because she wants to be able to save her progress when she goes for the superstar, as she knows that before she was turned into an ant. Now, this next section actually includes 3 different fairies. It seems that this fairy right here wants to steal Peach's flowers or something from, and these 2 fairies are reacting to this boo in the middle of them. This yellow fairy is crying because the boo's scaring her, and this blue fairy is mad because the boo scared her friend. In this next section, we see Meowser, who looks very ready to do some mischief. But luckily, for the sake of all the fairies and really every other character on this stamp chart, it looks like Mario and Rosalina are here to save the day. Rosalina specifically looks like she's trying to cast a spell on Meowser and stop him from doing whatever he's doing. Also, if we look to the left, we can see the fairy from the section before who was crying at the boo. But, I mean, as I look at it closer, she might actually be crying at Meowser. Because, I mean, think about it. He's taken all the fairies captive at one point, so why wouldn't you be scared of Meowser? I don't know if you caught it already, but there's actually a really big inconsistency in this section. Because if you look at it, the boo is directly facing this fairy. Although, if she was directly facing him and looking him in the eye, he should be embarrassed and be blushing right now. Which leads me to believe that the whole yellow fairy crying at Meowser thing is a more stable theory. Another thing, I said earlier that Rosalina was casting a spell on Meowser, trying to stop him from doing bad things. But if you actually look at it, she might be trying to escape Boom Boom, who's a line below. She is waving her wand in the same way that she waves in 3D World whenever she's doing her special power-up. And her special power-up indicates that she's jumping higher specifically to try to get away from something. And the way that Boom Boom has his hand in the air like he's trying to punch her may be more intentional than we think. At first glance, this next section probably doesn't look like anything, but if you look at it closer, it looks like that this charging Chuck is trying to charge at this question mark block in order to get a bunch of coins. But as for this pipsqueak that's right above him, I really don't have anything to say about. It most likely is supposed to go with the line before where Mario is looking back at the Galumba and he's probably trying to attack him while he's not looking. Now, this next section actually makes a little more sense to me than a lot of the other ones. We see this Luigi waving, looking very happy with himself. That's probably because right across from this is a picture of Cat Luigi trying to fight off this dry bones. Probably because this red fairy is scared of it. The Luigi we see in the circle is most likely serving as a speech bubble where he's telling the red fairy not to be afraid and that he has it under control, which is exactly what we see over here where Cat Luigi is trying to take the matters into his own hands and swipe the dry bones before he can even get close to the red fairy. When we go to the other side, we can see the peach we saw before with the little flower necklace. This green fairy seems to be very intrigued, complimenting her on it, as Peach looks at the ground like she's blushing. Moving below that, we have a very funny picture. This purple fairy looks very pleased with herself, and this purple fairy is obviously not aware that there is a cannonball coming straight for her head. Do I even have to say anything else? Nintendo knew exactly what they were doing. Looking at the toad for the next section, I've kind of come to a pretty good conclusion that all of the circles of the characters are most likely representing speech bubbles about what they're saying or thinking. With Toad, it seems like he's saying, I'll help you to the fairy because she looks really mad at the boo. And that leads us right back to this Mario on the second line because before I didn't actually know this. So what I think he's saying here is like something like woohoo or let's go because he has all the power-ups and he's ready to obliterate the Bomb. Looking at this next section, we can see a piranha plant trying very, very hard to eat this fairy, and even much so that he is shaking his pot trying to get to her. The fairy really likes how she can keep getting away, but she shouldn't be cocky for too long because there is a Goomba right in front of her, and if she keeps going, she's gonna run straight into him. This next section, actually, I might have to revert a theory that I had about Boom Boom. I said earlier that Rosalina might be trying to get away from Boom Boom, which may very well be true, but it makes more sense to me that Boom Boom is trying to hit the question mark block that's just a line above. Even though he's not like close to it at all, he has his fist in the right position and his eyes are fixed on the right place. And there's a coin right below it, which he seems like he's trying to grab. My theory is that he hit the question mark block before, and now that bell power up fell out of it. And literally right after this hardcore lore and theorizing spree, we have Boomerang Toad and Rosalina reading. Like, literally, what am I supposed to say about this? The only thing that I could even begin to theorize on is two different possibilities for Toad. Either A, he's trying to throw the boomerang at Boom Boom, and he's very happy about it because he knows that there's no way he can miss because he's occupied doing something else. Or Pom Pom gave him one of her boomerangs because he looks pretty happy, like it was a gift or whatever. And Pom Pom has her finger up to her mouth like she's saying shush, like don't tell anyone that I gave this to you. And she's also winking. So it makes me believe that there's something going on between Toad and Pom Pom. Anyways, we also have Captain Toad. If my speech bubble theory is correct here, Captain Toad's probably saying something like, ready for adventure! As for this cat Peach, I haven't exactly made up my mind for what's going on. It looks like she's wiping her eyes like she's crying, but at the same time, it also looks like she's wiping sweat off her eyebrow if she, escaped a scary situation. Like, maybe even the dry bones from a line before. There's also one of these fuzzy guys on this line, but I have a bigger theory that I'm going to get to later. And just like that, we're on the bottom line. Here we have Luigi in a Tanuki suit, right next to a boomerang, and one of these patrol wind-up guys. Yeah, it's the first line, and we already have no context. Luigi might be really happy because he glided over the boomerang because he really likes the power up that he has. And it's probably that this patrol guy is chasing after Luigi, even though he doesn't have any angry eyebrows signifying that he's trying to catch him. I really don't know. But also, we have Mario and an ice skate having a grand old time trying to run over this patrol guy, so that's probably why he's there. So, next up, we have a little extra Toad scene. So, my theory is that Toad came out of the pipe, and as soon as he came out of the pipe, there was this cat Goomba right here, and he was so scared of it that he didn't know what to do, and he flinched or something, and the cat Goomba hit him. So now he's running on the ground scrambling for a power up, which in this case is a mushroom. Right on the other side of the pipe, though, is actually the boomerang flower that Luigi decided not to get from earlier, so he actually doesn't really have that bad of a case here. As for this next Rosalina scene, I cannot make up my mind for what's happening. I mean, there are three possibilities. Either A, Rosalina is trying to be really mean to Toad and get the mushroom before he can, just like a toxic online player, or B, she's trying to hit the cat Goomba so she can protect Toad. Or C, she's trying to grab that coin from the green pocket guy before he can eat it again. I mean, come on, Rosalina, make up your mind. But it doesn't really matter if she's doing option A, option B, or option C. This tadpole is really liking it. In this next section, we see Tanuki Mario wagging his tail at something, making it look like that he just defeated an enemy. And my reasoning for thinking this is because there's a 1-up right above him, which might mean that he just defeated something and did it with such accuracy that he got a 1-up. And yet again, sticking to my speech bubble theory, I'm going to put some words in Princess Peach's mouth right here. Well, what she's probably talking about is that she wants to get that fire flower because the very last stamp on the page is, in fact, Princess Peach with a fire flower. As with this random brick that's right beside the fire flower, it probably goes with the Tanuki Mario because, as we were talking about before, Tanuki Mario was probably destroying some blocks, which might even be the origin of the fire flower. And then we have Pom Pom. I stated earlier that she probably was the one that gave Toad the boomerang power, but now I'm not so sure. I say this because there's actually another Toad lying on the very bottom layer, which is sleeping in the cat costume. And right above his head is a mega mushroom, which, how could it get there? And none other than Pom Pom. She has her finger to her lips telling us to be quiet, like not telling Toad that she did this. And maybe it's actually a prank where she's dropping the mega mushroom on Toad so he's going to be confused when he wakes up why he's so big. I don't know. I mean, I guess it kind of makes a little sense. And now we have some kind of underwater scene for literally no reason. We have a Cheep Cheep, a Blooper, and Plessy, which they don't really fit anywhere else, especially because Princess Peach literally has a fire flower right there. Like, I don't think this actually qualifies as a water scene because there's fire. But anyway, I honestly don't have anything to say about Luigi. He's just jumping. Like, he might be jumping on Plessy because Plessy looks pretty happy, like they're about to go on an adventure, and that's probably what's actually happening. But, I mean, you can never be so sure. And for the very last section is actually something that I mentioned earlier. I said that I had a theory for this fuzzy that I was going to talk about once we actually got to the bottom layer. And basically, my theory is that Mario is trying to run directly under the fuzzy in order to get down to Luigi. And where's Luigi? Right next to Plessy. Where's Plessy? Probably underwater. And what's underwater? The blooper and the Cheep Cheep. So I think that this is actually an underwater level. I mean, at least this spot. And that Mario is trying to get down to the water by escaping the fuzzy. And just like that, we have talked about the entire stamp board. It was genuinely fun talking about all the theories that could possibly be happening on this stamp board. Even though it was a bit messy at parts, most of them ended up coming together pretty well with some other parts of the stamp board. But even though some of them didn't, it was still really fun to try to make the most out of nothing. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did because it was genuinely really fun to make. And goodbye.